This is a podcast about both having autism and living with someone who has autism. My mom is Sonya, and I'm Josh, and this is Josh Has Autism.
Hey everybody, welcome to Josh Has Autism.
Hello.
Josh?
Yes?
You were kind of a superstar last weekend.
Yeah, I
right?
guess.
Yes,
yeah.
okay. I will elaborate because I really want to hear what you have to say about this big picture.
Okay.
So, anybody that listens to this podcast know that you love D&D.
Yes.
Well, there was this improv group that last weekend did a show called Pushing Dragons.
Yes.
And it is an improv group that basically does D&D.
Yeah.
It's live.
Yeah. It's...
It's described to me as a combination of D&D and LARPing.
Yes.
And so...
Which I have also done.
Yes. So, here's why I want to talk about this, because there are things that you accomplish when those around you speak your language.
Yes.
There are things that you can accomplish when you're in that zone.
In that mindset, yeah.
In that mindset. That you couldn't do otherwise. And I've seen it happen enough times to know that you're not faking that. And I don't understand. It's not to say that I understand it, though. That's why I want to talk to you. That's why I want to talk to you about it. Yeah. Because you've explained to us that D&D helps you to... So we know about you that you love reading stories. And when you read stories, the words come to life. You see what's happening. And I think, in a good book, that's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
But you feel the same way with D&D because it's a story.
Yeah.
The difference is it's a story that involves a whole bunch of people's input, and then you create this story together at D&D.
Yeah. It's like a collaboration effort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so people have asked me before, well, how can you go to D&D? How can you participate? How can you be... It can be loud, it can, have all kinds of things that would typically lead to sensory overload.
Yes.
And what about it makes it so that you can function and be successful and enjoy it so much? And I think you'd explained it. It's because it's a story.
Yeah.
And these like-minded people are right there with you creating a story.
Right.
Now, what you did last weekend was you went to the...
Literal theater.
A theater.
Yeah.
In downtown Norfolk.
Yes.
And you took a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And she is also on the spectrum.
Yes.
And she also loves D&D.
She's a DM herself, yes.
Yes. Okay, so you both went. Now, I'm going to stop talking. I would like for you to explain to me how it is that... Here's what we know about you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't like loud noises. You don't like a lot of people. You don't like bright lights. You don't necessarily like people touching you. It's very selective, and it's,
It's a lot of sensory stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And you have learned the niceties of an exchange.
Mm-hmm.
This takes it to a whole new level. And what made it work? Why does it... How? Why?
All right. So first, a little background about this thing, I guess. So whenever I first heard about this, you were the one who brought it to my attention, and it was like, oh my gosh, really? This is awesome. Because it's my thing. It's D&D is one of my
It's your passion.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I will even say it goes to like your focuses.
yes,
I couldn't think of the word. Sorry,
yeah,
there was like a delay
yeah.
there because I was going to say fixes, but I was like, no, that's not right. It's a focus.
Yeah.
It's yes.
Well, fixes could be short for fixation, but yes,
Mm-hmm.
and it is really that's true. It's D&D is one of my focuses, one of my
Passions.
passions. Yeah, and whenever this had first been brought to my attention, it was for this show happens once a month, and so it was actually brought to my attention by you over a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't have.
Well, there was a show, and you wanted to go to that one, but
Mhm.
I couldn't take you because I had a gig.
Right.
And it's downtown Norfolk, and it goes from 8 o'clock at night to 10:30 at night.
Yes.
And that's something that you're not comfortable driving to because it's unfamiliar. It's at night,
Yes.
and it would stress you out too much to do it.
Right.
So
And
you needed a ride to and from. I just couldn't do it the last time, but over this weekend we were able to do that.
yeah, and I mean during the day I've driven down there before, and it was horrifying to me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do anything for days, I think,
Yeah, yeah.
because it was just that bad to me.
Yeah, it's convoluted, it's stressful.
Yes.
If you are lost in an area that doesn't feel comfortable and you don't know how to get out of it,
Yes.
And what I mean by that is that there's just so you can think you're going a direction and you're not. You end up somewhere completely the opposite of where you want to go. So it can be very, very complicated over there.
Yeah, and so I had made sure to have a ride with you for this.
Yep.
And one of the background of the thing. I'm sorry. The show itself was started out as during COVID, where no one could go out anywhere, and these guys would just play on the computers with each other, doing D&D.
Okay.
And restrictions were lifted, and they're like, we don't really want to get rid of this.
Mm-hmm.
And someone had the idea, well, why not make a show of it?
Mm-hmm.
So they did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just a show, though. It's interactive.
Yes. And if anybody wants to see what that looks like, they are called Pushing Dragons.
Yes.
And if you look up Pushing Dragons in Norfolk, Virginia, also if you say, look, Pushing Dragons at Push Theater is what it's called. It's called the Push Theater. So if anybody wants to see what...
It's on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Their shows are a couple months backlogged, and it comes out a few months after it's done.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
But when I say it's interactive, in D&D you have to roll dice to see if your character can succeed or fail at doing something. And the audience, you have to raise your hand or whatever, and they'll give you a dice. It's like the size of a bear's paw. I don't know. It's big.
Like a soccer ball?
It's a little smaller than that, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you just throw it up at the stage.
Oh. And then wherever that lands,
on whatever number
that's
it
the
lands.
move that they...
No, it's to see if they succeed or fail.
Oh, okay.
at what they were attempting to do.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the audience is interactive in that way. And one of the before the story part of the show started, for like introducing everything, the guy who runs it, he's DM and the co-owner of Push Theater. He went on to explain the rules of everything, and you can't throw the dice at people in the audience.
Yeah.
Please don't hit the lights or whatever at the stage. You can hit the people on the stage. That's fine, but they have they're covered by their insurance. You in the audience are not.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
but it was. I'm.
You're excited about it?
Yeah.
So right. So here's what happens. This is exactly why I wanted you to talk about it. Because when the topic is this thing that you love so much, something happens. You are able to articulate. You are able to. Well, let me rephrase that, because you can articulate a lot when we do this podcast.
Right.
But outside of this podcast, you kind of withdraw. Outside of this podcast, when we talk about D&D, you light up, and you're able to talk about it.
Yeah. And it's. I know what I'm talking about. It's one of my focuses, I guess, is like you said, it's important to me, I guess.
Well, it's like it's your language.
Yes.
So it flows comfortably. It makes sense to you. And it's, I'll just put it this way because I really don't understand it fully, but it's like the parts of your brain that are generally shut down, and I'll put it in simplistic terms, but it's how I do it.
Okay.
Right? If I'm talking to you, part of your brain goes, nope, not today. But if D&D, or in this case, this improv troupe is doing D&D,
mm-hmm.
that sparks.
Yeah.
So it's awake now.
Yeah.
And it's very comfortable for you, and it makes you happy, and you're able to talk all day about it. You're able to be in situations that you wouldn't otherwise. So we talked about how outside of that event, you recognize that you would not be able to drive comfortably.
Right.
And so that was taken care of. But once you were inside, was there any point where the sounds bothered you or the lights bothered you?
So before the show, there was a lot going on in the theater. Once we were allowed in to get to our seats, which it wasn't assigned seating or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very much a case where I didn't even know where to look. So I couldn't keep my eyes on any one thing for even longer than a second. Because I just didn't know what to look at. I didn't know...
Before it started?
Before it started. And it was... I was really excited for this. I didn't really know what to expect from it. So it was nervous energy, but excited about looking forward to it. And then the show started. And it was very, very cool. It was interactive. The people that were going up and down handing people the dice to roll the things were nicknamed Dice Winches. And they were even dressed up as in medieval.
It just reminds me of a Renaissance fair.
Yeah.
That we've gone to up in Pennsylvania, where if anybody listening ever has a chance to go to the Renaissance fair, it is so fun.
Yes.
It's just you're transported, into this different world where there's like human chessboards.
Yeah.
There's all these people dressed up in costume and they're speaking
flowery language.
Absolutely, from the old world. It's just these accents and yes, and so it's super super interesting. They what is it called? Like they have
jousting?
Beer. They have beer, but it's not called beer. It's
mead.
Yeah, in those
in steins.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
which they also had mead at the show.
Oh, they did really?
Yes.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
But yes, and so at a Renaissance fair, for example, you might go to a regular fair and you'll get, what's it called? Like cotton candy or whatever.
Popcorn and stuff like
that.
that.
Well, at a Renaissance fair, like you get like a humongous turkey leg.
when you say humongous, that doesn't do it justice.
No, it's like they're.
It's like the size of the rotisserie chickens.
I know. It's like these are like turkeys on steroids. I don't even know where they got them from.
Oh my god!
But it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Just so much fun. You said jousting.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the horses. It's just so much.
And it's all
to see.
Open. It's not indoors really.
Yeah.
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 But that was the Renaissance Fair.
Mm-hmm.
And it was similar. It has a similar kind of feel, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was limited seating, and all the seats were sold out.
Yeah.
And so, going back to what I was saying though, the beginning of the show before it started, but as the GM was introducing himself and all that, he asked, "Do we have any people that are here at the show for the first time?" And from what I saw, about half the people raised their hands. And he started asking me, "Okay, where are you guys from?" Some people said Norfolk, Portsmouth, whatever, that general area. I forget which one they said though. The next group said Boston. Whoa. And then he asked the next group, California. Then he pointed at us and said Newport News, but that's not really as impressive as California. And he said, "Oh no, you know what? No, you had to go through the tunnel." Yeah. Which is true.
2 of them.
Oh my gosh!
You had to go through 2 tunnels to get there.
Yeah. But around here, it's famous for being backed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was cool that he was asking about that.
Mm-hmm.
Early on in the show, there was a fight scene about to go on, which it was happening in the story. It was in an arena with a crowd as the audience.
Yeah.
The audience was the audience.
Yeah.
And it was really cool like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there was supposed to be 3 people fighting against one of the main characters, and they only had 1 on stage. And so the guy who's running it was like, "You know what? We need 3 people up there. We have 1. You guys from Boston. One of you guys going up, and somebody from Newport News." So I went up.
That's so cool. So I'm saying you were like a superstar last weekend.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so how was it being up there?
It was a lot of fun, actually. And it... there's a term for enemies like that, called a mob or a trash mob, because they're low-level enemies that don't really have much effect, really.
Okay.
But that's one of the things I was playing out as. It's called a kobold, and sorry, I actually a mob or a trash mob is known for having a lot of them, and anyway, sorry.
That's okay.
So they're known for being a lot and being easy to kill. That's all.
Okay. Okay, so here are my specific questions about
Sorry.
okay? No, that's cool. That's cool. Yes. So here are my specific questions.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about this multiple times. When we do this podcast, you are very thoughtful and articulate, and it's like every time when we do this, you rise to this occasion. So it could be that in this podcast you're very engaged and animated. When we turn the record button off, you're like, right? Because it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah.
It's just you and me when we do this.
Yeah.
And I can see it. It's like, okay, you're on.
Yeah.
That is something that you have really worked to be able to master.
Yeah, and I don't even call it mastering. I just am. I can do it. I don't claim to be a master of it at all, though.
Right. I see what you're saying. Now, when you go with these people that think like you do and talk like you do and understand this language that I am just still trying to figure out. I don't get it. There is something in you that really kind of wakes up. It's like I said, that's synapses here is like if I'm talking to you or if anybody else is talking to you about a different subject, it wouldn't spark and kind of wake up. And this is just how I'm describing it. Look, this is not scientific. This is my observation.
Right.
If I were to bring up D&D to you, just talking to me that doesn't know anything about it, you kind of come to life.
Yeah.
And what happens, and I'm wondering, do you notice the difference in if I was to talk to you about anything else versus talking to you about D&D? Can you explain the difference in what happens?
I mean, I think it's almost like I'm more open about it. Like I'm not
like
as...
You're not resistant?
No, as in I'm not as... reticent, or I'm not as introverted. How about that?
Okay.
I'm not as careful with what I say, I guess.
Oh. You're not as controlled.
I guess, yeah.
Because that's really interesting the way you put that, because it is true that you're always concerned about saying the wrong thing, about misunderstanding somebody. You've even talked about how when you're having a conversation with somebody, do you look at them and how long are you supposed to look at them and how do you know when it's your turn?
Yeah.
And is it because you're a character? And and all of a sudden you're not you, so you don't have those limitations. Why? I shouldn't even call them limitations. I don't like that term.
I know.
I don't like that because it's you do it different than I do. That doesn't mean that
It doesn't mean it's any less limited,
yeah,
even
exactly.
if at times it is. It, I will admit that there are times where things are easier than others, but that's just normal.
Sure.
I say this without quotations. That's normal.
Yes, yes. So describe this thing. So you talk about because this makes all the difference in the world. And what I'm saying to you is that when it's D&D that you're talking about, much like if you're talking about a great novel that you love,
Yeah.
you come alive. You really you're animated, you smile, your eyes sparkle.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That happens?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And you can see that it brings joy to you.
Yeah.
And I get all that. What I just said, everything I just said is absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to understand, now look, if I have to do laundry versus, go to the movies, clearly, one is
More enjoyable than the other.
more enjoyable than the other.
Mm-hmm.
But I can do both with the same mood. I can do both with, when we talk about D&D, though, there's something that just kind of awakens and is different.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if there's any explanation that you have how that feels to you.
So, whenever I'm talking to someone about D&D,
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, we're on the podcast. We're talking about D&D.
Right.
I'm more open, more verbose, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
More willing to say things, even if I'm not 100% certain how to say it. And even talking to you, you don't necessarily understand what I'm talking about. You can understand the feelings I'm having about it, but you don't necessarily understand what I'm talking about.
Yes, that's correct.
And that's how I feel whenever I'm talking to you about this. For me, about D&D.
Okay.
If I'm talking to someone who knows what I'm talking about, who gets what I'm talking about, who enjoys it like I do, it's even more so. It's even less restrained.
Okay.
And it
So you don't. So a typical conversation that you would have with somebody,
mm-hmm.
can be full of kind of angst. Can be full of right. Like, when do you do what? It's always this thought in your head. Like, what do I do now? Is this okay? Is that okay? What am I supposed to say? Am I supposed to say something?
Right.
But when it was with D&D, it takes you away from those, like,
constraints.
parameters. Yes, those constraints.
A bit, yeah. And it's not just knowing when to speak or anything else like that. It's that because there is still that, because you're still talking to the people who are playing these characters.
Mm-hmm.
So you still have to have respect to them and everything. With that said, you're playing a role. So to play a role, you, can be more not you.
Well, you had some therapy recently with a gentleman that is new. He's not a typical person that you see.
Mm-hmm.
You saw him a number of times. And what was fascinating is that he understands your language.
Yes.
He understands D&D. And what he did was when he realized that you were, I'm using quotes,
Mm-hmm.
shut down,
Mm-hmm.
he began speaking your language.
Yes.
He knew, because a question had come up, you saw a book on his shelf that was about D&D.
Yeah.
And you asked him about it. And, because what two things, I mean, D&D and it's in a book. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, of course you're going to recognize that. So you asked him a question about the book, and he was able to then recognize, oh, you speak that language. Then he started gearing his communication with you around
That lingo.
that lingo.
Yeah.
And it was like all of a sudden, there you were. And I don't know how to explain it, because it's like you could answer questions, but it was even commented on that this is a stark difference. This is how much of a difference it made. Before that happened, and it's noted,
Mm-hmm.
and these are not my words, this is noted, that you were not making eye contact, that you were staring down at your hands or down at the floor, and you would get kind of fidgety and uncomfortable. You were not real engaged in the conversation. You were polite, you were friendly, respectful, did your best to answer questions. There was a lot of, I don't know how to answer that. Once you saw the book and you asked a question about the book and he realized, oh, he is a D&D guy, he started using the terms.
In the situations, yeah.
And
to phrase the questions.
Yeah, and he said that you just kind of sparked. And from that point forward, as long as he was speaking that language, can you give an example of that language that was used with that therapist? And his question, do you recall anything that... I know it's really hard for you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't remember any specific questions, but I do remember that a lot of the, if not questions themselves, but the situation around the questions, he would set them up in a D&D setting.
Yeah. So what do you call it if you roll something to find your next move? What's that called? Is it just rolling the dice?
Yeah.
Is it just rolling the dice to find out whether or not something worked or it didn't?
Yeah.
So it's just called rolling the dice.
Generally, yeah.
So if I were to say to you...
It's also called making a check.
Okay, making a check. That's... Okay. So if I were to say to you, if you were having a time where you're not really sure what's going to happen, whatever, and I just said to you, well, make a check. Is that how you do it? I don't even know how you do it. What I'm trying to say is, the language, if I were to say to you, make a check, that's your language.
Yeah, it would be more than that, but yes.
So that would help you to feel comfortable and kind of give you a direction to go, right?
In a sense, yes. Generally speaking, yes.
Okay. I know this isn't working because I don't know enough about this to formulate a question that makes sense to you.
Right.
But what I'm trying to point out is that somebody that does understand the language used it to reach you.
Yes,
and
connect.
It worked.
Yes.
And when that language is used, you're happier, you're more engaged, and you're more productive.
Yes. And
how do we do that in your life? Is there a way for that we can do this in your life, in your daily life, so that you feel, I mean, I don't really know. Look, I love doing stand-up.
yeah.
I love doing stand-up. I love writing this material. I love practicing the material. I love performing it. Everything about it.
Yeah.
But I'm also able to do things that are not stand-up.
Yeah.
And so that makes me really happy. That's my passion.
Yeah.
But I can do other things.
Yeah. You're still snarky off the stage as well, but
well, yeah, but so my question is, is there a way to help you feel comfortable if you're not at D&D, if you're not.
So I know that in D&D, instead of making a check or saying something like that, there is a thing that's a short rest and a long rest. And it's something that will help gain a lot of the abilities and stuff like that back. So saying take a short rest or something like that, for me at least as a D&D guy, it's like telling someone take 10, take a breather, go step away from the situation and then come back. That's kind of the equivalent.
So if somebody has autism and they have a focus that really helps them to sparkle the way that you do, using that language, implementing that particular activity or experience in conversations, do you think that will be helpful?
To try and get a point across or try and use it as a teaching thing or whatever, yeah, absolutely. And it, like Connor, for example, is a huge dinosaur dude. And Legos too and all that stuff, but dinosaurs are one of his big passions. So saying something like go sit in the nest for a little, I don't know, something like that.
So what we've done with that, I see what you're saying. So what I've done with Connor, yes, he loves dinosaurs. We use dinosaurs to talk about the way people eat and what they eat. And he knows that my favorite dinosaur is a brontosaurus because the brontosaurus doesn't eat meat. And I don't eat meat. So that would be I get that dinosaur. I get that. But I don't, I'm not tall, like we've talked about this. I'm not tall, so I can't reach the leaves like they do. But I choose not to eat meat. And they don't eat meat. And so it was just interesting because it's something that...
It's a correlation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he really understood that.
Yeah.
And thought that it was cool.
Yeah.
And he never forgot, since that conversation, he never forgot that my favorite dinosaur is a brontosaurus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But using that person's focus, their interest, their passion, using that in a teaching situation, or to find out how to ask questions, to connect to someone.
Yes.
Using that spark is probably one of the quickest and easiest ways to become engaged with someone on the spectrum.
Well, what happens with you when we talk to you in a way that just clicks like that? You're more engaged. You're able to answer questions. You're more able to interact with us rather than if we were just asking you, questions that you just like anything outside of that, no matter what it is that we're talking about, really, we don't get the response that we do unless books, a library, or D&D is involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And
well, it's like that doctor.
Yeah.
Figured that out in speaking with you, and it was amazing. It's like you were a different person all of a sudden.
Yeah, I remember you looking at him like in shock and like, how did you do this?
Yes. I mean, you were engaged fully after that. It was mind-blowing, and it's kind of like he just put the key into a lock that has been locked as long as I have known you. To that level. I mean, it was like, boom, just like that. It was different. You were different. So it's really cool. So what you're saying is that you know D&D so well, it's a character-based, and you don't have to regulate yourself.
As much, right.
It just flows.
Yeah.
And so you were on...
Not always, but it does.
But you were on stage doing this.
Yes.
Now, let me just say that you are very comfortable on stage.
I am.
You were in an a cappella singing group for a while. You have done plays. You're in chorus.
And musicals. All that stuff.
You're comfortable up there.
Yeah.
And because like you said, I didn't know this at the time, but it's like, well, I'm somebody else. Yes, I'm comfortable. I'm somebody else.
Yeah. And one thing I find interesting is that while at this theater, it's the first time I've ever been on a stage where you have been on there before me.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yes, I have performed at the Push Theater twice.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it was just an interesting little thing that.
Little side note there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they called you up?
Yeah.
Were you nervous?
I was excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't expect that whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they gave me a little helmet with a paper mache thing on it.
That's so funny. Are there pictures?
It's going to be posted on YouTube.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
At least in a few months, at least, because they're backlogged.
Okay, we'll let everybody know when it comes up.
Yeah, just...
Okay. So this is really... I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, it's okay.
No. So, how would a parent help their child to become fully engaged by using their language?
I think the easiest way to do that is to try and phrase questions or situations or explanations in a way that would incorporate that interest.
So, instead of the phrase, "because I said so," which is an awful phrase for a parent to say anyway, right? Or "because I'm the mom," not also one that I don't really care for. What if I said, "I'm the DM"?
No.
No? It can't be?
For me, no.
So it's not like, "Dude, you have to listen to me. I'm the DM today."
Yeah. Where's another game?
Seriously, though.
No,
Isn't it used right? Isn't it used correctly?
In that sense, yes. But my point of saying that, though, was both because of a joke, but also because without understanding what the context of things are,
yes,
you're not really going to understand how to use them. Though.
Okay, I get it.
Which in this case, that's a very common thing. Is if a player doesn't get along with the GM or DM, those terms are interchangeable. They can go.
Game.
Yeah, they can.
I get it. All right.
So
you would just be like, game change. I thought I came up with a good one just now. This makes so much sense.
It was.
You're better at the game.
But it was a good point that needed to be brought up, though, because without understanding those things and trying to use them, it's very likely that either the incorrect message gets across, or just that look at that stare of like, really, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's.
So tell me this. I don't want to just keep talking in circles, but when you were at the doctor's office and that particular psychiatrist began speaking to you that way, what did you feel? Like, I would think clearly you understood and felt immediately, oh, this is different. This I get. So explain that.
Oh wow. I mean, since I've had these kind of things where I have like-minded friends and people I hang out with, you've called them my people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's finding out that he was of similar minds and that he was my people.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh wow, cool. And
the words just flowed then? You felt less inhibited?
I became more comfortable.
Okay.
It was...
You said you became more comfortable?
Yes.
Okay.
It's...
Yeah.
It's not so much that I become more open or anything like that, although that does happen as a side thing. The fact that I become comfortable talking with them about things, that in turn is what opens up conversation more.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw instantly a change.
Yeah, I mean,
it was phenomenal.
I noticed this just now with I was hunched over and then almost reenacting it, I guess, was oh, what, really? Or however I said it, whenever he brought up that conversation.
Oh, so what you're saying is that you were kind of slouched in your seat, and when he responded to you the way he did, you sat up, and your energy was different.
Yeah.
Even the way you were sitting in the seat was different.
My shoulders relaxed. They weren't hunched over.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring that up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted again.
No.
That it was that stark of a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like a different person. And I wish that I could bottle that. I wanted to do a podcast about that today because, it's one of those times where I say, hey, I have an idea for a podcast, but I don't know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? I don't.
Yeah, you wouldn't know how to further questions about it and things like that. Yeah,
I don't, because I don't know the language. I don't know, yes, as much as I try. But I did want to bring it up because you had such a great weekend. You got to get on stage with, oh my gosh, how wonderful is that? You took a friend with you, which is also new because she loves D&D. You took her along with you.
Yeah.
And you both, even you two sitting in the back seat while we were taking you, you guys were this banter. It's all about D&D.
Yeah.
and was happy and excited, and
Yeah.
it was just really cool.
Yeah.
So it was just a wonderful night for you,
Yeah.
and it was all about D&D and being around your people,
Yeah.
like you say, and I'm just feel so happy for you about that. But I just thought, I don't really know how to reach it, but I guess the whole point about this is that when somebody speaks your language, you wake up.
For lack of a better way, yeah.
And your energy changes,
Yeah.
and you're able to...
I become more attentive, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yes. And I personally don't know how to package that, but there are the people out there that do.
Package it?
Well, it's called geek therapy.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
I found out at, there's this thing called geek therapy,
Mm-hmm.
where they do the very thing that we're talking about, where therapists reach people by using this language.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. And I'd like to do a podcast on it. I just don't know enough about it to even,
Right. And that same doctor, or was it Doctor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was the one who actually told us about this.
What?
About geek therapy.
Yeah.
And because we had no idea it even existed.
Mm-mm. But we're looking into it. I'm looking into it to
Yeah.
try to get that, make that available to you.
Yeah.
In the way of, so the therapy would be, so right now you're just about to get an ABA therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and you're working on life skills and executive functioning.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the focus areas. Now, if we can get you a person that speaks your language,
Yeah.
that it could change everything, because the things that feel very daunting and overwhelming to you, you could potentially see them in a new way.
Mm.
And that's really why I wanted to do this podcast today, is to say that I see so many changes in you when it comes to the language that's used and when it comes to this topic. Yeah. And I feel like that cannot just be isolated to you. That's got to be other people as well.
Right. And
then it's so worth exploring. Yeah. And finding out. But anyway, we'll do a podcast soon on geek therapy.
Okay.
And that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Because I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool. So I think what's happened on this podcast is that you have been excellent. I don't know what questions to ask. So I don't know what else to ask. I think I'm kind of done. But because you've been very clear, and I just appreciate that so much. I'm so proud of you. I can't wait to see the video on YouTube. I'm so proud of you.
I will point out that it was a mature audience thing.
Oh, okay.
So
well, you can't control that. And we'll listen to it first before we send. Before we direct people there.
Right.
Yeah, let's just say that. We'll just make sure it's okay for everybody.
Yeah.
Because you had no control over that.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm so proud of you. So happy for you. That's just stinking awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Well, I hope this made sense to people and maybe helped a little bit. Please give us 5 stars if you feel like it. And go to the website, sonyaking.com. That would be cool. I hope that you are healthy and happy out there. And we missed you last week. Another one of just family members keep passing away. And it's just so sad. And so we missed you last week. Sorry about that. Glad to be back. And just moving forward. Yeah. So hug the people that you love. Tell them that you love them. And be there for one another. And again, I hope you are healthy and happy. And we'll talk to you next week. Love you.
Bye.